I'm your host, Donna Cates, and each week we'll dive into powerful stories, expert strategies, and practical tools to help you take charge of your financial future. Whether you're planning for retirement, navigating a divorce, or simply looking to build your wealth with confidence, this is your space to grow, learn, and thrive. Let's get started with today's podcast. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to introduce you today to Shantera Chatman. She's the owner of EmpowerHer Consulting. Shantera, I'm really eager to delve deep into your career journey now. Can you give us about a 90-second overview of what you do and why you got into it, please?
Sure. So Shantera Chatman, I'm the president of Her Consulting, and we're a boutique consulting firm that focuses on change management, strategic communications, and strategic planning. And I started this business because I wanted to be a catalyst for change. I wanted to work within organizations that one had the capacity to put energy and effort into change management processes, but also those organizations where change seems to be kind of forced on you rather than adopted. And so I
Mm.
wanted to be that person that let people understand, allow people to understand what change management is. And also, I worked in corporate America for the first part of my career. So I understand the risk adverse, the change adverse organizations. And I just wanted to be the change that I wish I had when I was there.
That's so fascinating. Having grown up in the corporate world myself and now being independent,
Yeah.
I totally realize the freedom that we have when we're not having to follow somebody else's plan. So I totally appreciate, and I think the words that you were using is that wanting to participate versus being forced to. So yes, kudos to you. So tell me, and tell us a little bit more about your industry that you're serving. You're in the oil and gas, or all over. Tell me about that.
So thankfully, change management can be applied everywhere. But for the past couple of years, I really have been engulfed in the oil and gas industry almost solely. I do have some smaller clients that are not the big, larger corporations that are in nonprofits or even those who are just governmental agencies. But a lot of the work that I get these days has come from the oil and gas industry.
Okay, awesome, awesome. But expanding beyond that, so not limited to.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, universities have called, and anywhere that there is a change, whether it's a leadership change or a technology change, the work that I do can be applied.
Okay, that's awesome. So tell me, what is the biggest problem that you see in your industry right now, and how are you working to solve that?
I think the biggest problem when it comes to change management and is the change part of that. That first word is really the thing, that fear of change that comes with most people thinking that change is going to mean take my job or change is going to mean stop everything that I've been doing. And so the biggest issue is getting people over that change and also that impatience, thinking that we're going to change, everything's going to change tomorrow. So actually adopting the process of change and understanding that there's a mind shift that has to happen and all of those things. And so once we as a team, my Power Consulting team, go in and work with our clients, we're talking to them about what this process looks like, that it's not a one and done, that there's an evergreen process that's continuously moving. And so it's just one of those things where we have to give ourselves grace, and we try to tell our clients that you need to give your teams grace because it's not easy for them to change something they may have been doing for 10 plus years. And so that's the one thing that I think is the most difficult, is having those conversations, getting leadership on board to do that, especially when you're in some of those high technical organizations where they're used to just, get it done. We're snapping through it, we're whipping through it. You mean to tell me it's going to take 6 months, 2 years? I don't think so. That's what,
Mhm.
so the education of it all.
Got it. And what resonates with me is just even when you say the word change, it is like a fear mechanism. It just automatic. Oh, okay, I'm on high alert automatically, and
Absolutely.
that's without us talking about anything specifically. So there you go. But I love the approach of um, actually educating the leadership on how to communicate that to everyone so that they're getting their buy-in and not just forcing it down their throat, so to speak.
Yeah. And so, that's the one thing that before we start anything, it's okay, let me talk to you about what change management is and what it isn't. That way the leaders understand the entire, the whole life cycle of change and why it needs to be there from beginning to end, from the moment we start and how we communicate, how we train, how we engage each stakeholder group, and even how we measure the success. They need to understand all of those pieces. So when they're talking to their teams or we ghostwrite something for them to share, they know how to respond afterwards.
That's awesome. So tell me, what makes you unique in the way that you're helping individuals through these processes?
I think what makes me unique is I really want to understand the client. So going in and actually understanding the culture, because even if it's just it's a technology change, you're still having a huge impact on the culture. It's one thing to say we're switching leaders. It's another to add something to someone else's plate. And so to understand what kind of organization we're going into, are we going into a total, everyone's in the office, or are some people off site somewhere, or some people on an oil rig, just all of those things, because that's going to play into the plan that we create. And I say we because I rarely do anything without the client being involved from the beginning. We are partnering to create this change strategy to make sure that it fits within their group. And a lot of change managers just kind of follow the book. And not saying that it's a bad book, but if you're just cookie cuttering it, it's not going to work out. So I do take the time to work with the client and understand what their aspirations are. What is the goal for this change? Why are we doing it? Make sure they understand the why. Because if they don't really get it, you're not going to be able to articulate it well.
Well, and I think too that most of us wouldn't have a job if it were as easy as following the playbook, right?
Right.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's really where AI could take your job. If there was a book that you could just give and say, here, do it.
But we got to have the human element and all of the emotional components of us being human to go along with it, right? So I certainly appreciate that. Well, I'd love for you to share with us something, whether it's personal or professional, that's been a challenge for you thus far in your life, and how that might have shaped how you're doing business today.
Sure. Yeah, a challenge, definitely. One of the biggest challenges I've faced recently, and it is personally, but it has bled definitely into my professional career, is having gone through a divorce a couple of years ago.
Mm.
And when I think about the changes that I've had to make, not just the obvious things about, moving and, all of those things and trying to make sure that my life is still the way it is. It was also, I use the term mind shift because that's what I had to shift myself. I had to be very intentional about how I was going about my business. The things that were important to me before were no longer important. But what does that mean? How am I interacting with other people? So it changed completely how I interacted. And also acknowledging the emotional stress that comes with it. Because a lot of times we try to just make it business as usual. And yes, as much as I tried to ensure that my clients were not affected, I was still going home and being very affected. And I think people around me saw a change, and I had to become aware of how I was coming across to people. I had to be aware of what I was saying and how I was saying it. So that emotional stress that we are under after a divorce, a lot of people say, it's a death because you're mourning something that you may have held so dear. For me, for 22 years or so, I held that dear to me, my marriage. It was, how am I talking now? Am I just like overly aggressive, or am I just looking like I'm ready to cry at every moment? I had to really, really check in with myself every single day until I was sure that I was, kind of this evolved person. And so I think that's been the biggest challenge, but I'm very proud of myself for acknowledging that there were some changes happening. I think because of what I do, but I was like, there's something going on here. You need to just be open to it. So I had to give myself grace and be open to a shift in how I was thinking and a shift in how I behave.
Wow, that is inspirational to me, because I work with so many people that will just go into themselves. They become emotional basket cases. They, all of the things that we feel, the shame, the guilt, what I do wrong, I'm not good enough, and all of the things. But, I think from a professional perspective, you're going through this life transition that was devastating on who knows what kind of levels. That's your story, but you were able to be vulnerable and still present doing your job. And that, to me, just hearing you talk about it, I think that sets you apart, because most people wouldn't be able to show up without just crying in their mess or whatever, right?
Yeah, I know. And what was crazy was I didn't actually disclose that I'd gone through a divorce until 9 months later. No one knew. They were like, "Are you kidding me? You were doing what? All of this time?" I was like, "Yes, all of this time." And they were like, "We never would have known because I masked it." But at the same time, when I came home, I made sure I was acknowledging it, because what I didn't want to happen was I didn't want to become this pool of anger or regret or resentment. I wanted to make sure I lived through it all, acknowledged it all, but also came out on the other side healthier emotionally and physically, and better just in general. My mom was concerned because she was like, "I don't think you're sitting down enough." Because I
Really
seem to
saw you doing the go, go, go.
Yes. Well, it just happened to be that I was traveling a lot with one of my clients at the same time.
Mm,
So to me, it was almost like it helped because I wasn't wallowing in anything.
right. You were wrapped up in the work that had to be done, but then you had the peace and downtime to nurture and take care of yourself.
Yes.
Yes, I hope all the ladies that are listening hear that it's okay to have self-care. That is the most vitally important all of the time. Because if we're not filling our own cups, we can't fill anybody else's. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, another shift here. If you could have lunch with any person, living or deceased, who would that be and why?
Oh, okay. So this is a good question because, I think at first my mind, as soon as you just asked it, my mind went to, like all of these people that may be celebrities. But truthfully, in my heart, if I could have lunch or sit down with anyone, it would be my grandmother. I was a granny's baby from the very beginning. And my mom would always say, "You never even really wanted me. You want to be with your grandma." So I was a granny's baby, but she passed away when I was really, really young, like 10 years old. And so
Mm,
um, I always get these stories, and people will say, "You're just like your grandmother," or "You're looking just like her right now," or "You that mean kid, just like she was mean to us." So yes, I'm like my mom's meanest child, and I don't care. It's okay. But
because you're like Granny, right?
yeah, because I'm like my granny. It's a compliment, right? But I feel like to sit and have a conversation with someone that I admired so much as a young person, but even more if I grew up and understood who she was and the things that she went through, it would be great to talk about everything that I've done, my corporate career, my marriage, all of the things in my business, and just see if she has any thoughts about it.
Mm,
Understand if she felt like she would have navigated things a little bit differently because she had lived, way longer than I am alive right now. And so it would be great to just hear that. And I'm sure there'll be more changes that I'll be wanting to make after she shared her words of wisdom.
right, absolutely. Well, I know if you're like most people who have lost a parent, you're still open to receiving that energy from them. And we get little glimpses every now and then.
Absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely.
awesome. At least that's my belief. So I'm claiming it. But all right. So tell me, if people want to reach out to you, learn more about your work and how they could work with you, how do they reach you?
Okay, so reaching me is fairly simple because on our website, powherconsulting.com, you can always put a message out there, or contact at powherconsulting.com is an email address that I get a lot of messages through. I read everything that comes through. And the one that's lately really been hitting is the LinkedIn messages. People will send me a message in LinkedIn and I'll respond to that as well. So whether it's reaching out via the website, email, or LinkedIn, I respond to all things.
Okay. And y'all heard it. This is the reason that we're here, is to help to introduce you to people who are changing the world in their own way. So don't hesitate to reach out if you feel compelled to do so with Shantera. But thank you for being such an awesome guest today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I hope today's conversation left you feeling inspired, informed, and ready to take the next step in your financial journey. Remember, building wealth isn't just about money, it's also about creating a life that aligns with your goals and values. If you found this episode valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with the women in your life who deserve financial empowerment too. Until next time, stay confident, stay empowered, and keep building the life you desire.